Look, I'm a longtime fan of the dinky, but I'm also a dedicated fan of transit. Transit is the way out of our congestion problem here in the Route 1 corridor. About the last 10 years, the towns in the corridor have been meeting with the Department of Transportation, and out of that came the interest in doing a lot more in terms of developing a real transit system for Central Jersey, one that would make a difference. And in looking at what could we do to expand and provide new means of mobility, the state developed a whole proposal for a bus rapid transit system. Now, that's not just another bus, and it's in fact an emerging technology that's based on the concept of, in effect, like a rubber wheel tram, so that you have a lot of the features that you'd have in a subway or a tram system, and the convenience and flexibility that you can get with rubber wheel vehicles. And that's what was proposed here in Central Jersey. It didn't go very far because basically there is expense, and that the state and federal government, especially in the area of transportation, have a lot of catch-up to do in order to do this. But another thing happened. The university came up with a proposal to do a new arts district. And the arts district was right where we now have the beloved Dinky station. And out of that whole conflict, they wanted to move the station even farther down the tracks. Originally, it was by Blair Arts, so it was pretty close to the center of town. And that proposal caused quite a bit of debate in town and quite a bit of interest in why wasn't our train system and our transit system one that came all the way up to the center of town. That we argued back and forth for a while, and then within the past year, the New Jersey Department of Transportation and New Jersey Transit have shown much more interest in figuring out whether we could do the preliminary routes for the bus rapid transit system. And when they started talking about new routes from in-town to Plainsboro and to Heightstown and so forth, we said, look, if you're going to have that many routes coming down from town, and they talked about developing a dedicated roadway alongside the dinky tracks, tearing up the dinky tracks, trying to move them over and making room for the dedicated roadways. And basically what we've said to them, wait a minute, why don't we stop and look at a system that really serves Princeton better? And what they've proposed essentially is an express system from the junction up on these dedicated tracks, dedicated roadways on the existing dinky right-of-way, with a stop, not a station, in the Arts District coming right up to Nassau Street and then looping Harrison Street to the shopping center and back down Witherspoon to Palmer Square and back again.
So more comprehensive.
A much more comprehensive, and not only preserves our access to the junction, but does it on a much faster schedule and much greater headway, so that what we're talking about is ultimately a 10-minute, a vehicle every 10 minutes during the peak hours of transit, and not being dependent on schedules which in this day and age aren't working anyway. Mm-hmm. So the essential proposal, which we're talking about at the local planning board, and New Jersey Transit will be talking about with us, is whether the town wants to cooperate and really look at a new cutting-edge 21st century approach to developing a good transit system.
A lot of questions here, money, but let's give Adam or Marc Monseau a chance to give their piece.
Marvin, first, I want to thank you. I mean, I think you laid out the BRT benefits in a good way, and I think we can all agree that everybody, that's talking about this issue believes in sustainable green transit and serving the town better. My main question about the BRT proposal is every study that I've read and everything I've seen talks about BRT being dependent on dedicated right-of-way. And I think a lot of people don't understand how we could possibly build dedicated right-of-way through Princeton Borough.
What is dedicated?
A dedicated bus lane, a bus lane solely for the BRT bus. And I've heard people talk that we were going to remove the parking on University Place to become a dedicated bus lane. There's been talk of possibly suspending street parking on Nassau Street during peak hours so that there can be dedicated bus lane, or even not having dedicated bus lane on Nassau Street, Harrison Road, Valley Road, which I understand is part of the proposed route, and even Witherspoon. I don't see how they can build dedicated right-of-way on any of those roads.
No, basically when the state developed its proposal for a BRT system, they saw it as a hybrid system, and one which does provide for dedicated roadways in certain areas, and but then local service, and it was the fact that we could add local service. We didn't want to just replace the dinky from the junction to where the station is now and keep fighting with the university as to where the station should be. If we can figure then, when you get to that point, that you use regular local streets, and you can get BRT vehicles that have all the advantages of a BRT system and run them on local streets. So that, and that's the way in which New Jersey Transit would approach it for us.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting concept. But again, in my mind, then that means that the bus that's actually leaving the dedicated right-of-way is nothing more than a bus as it enters the rest of the town. As a commuter, I'm looking for a dependable, reliable service that'll make sure that I make my connections at Princeton Junction. I take the train just about every day.
That's right.
And to me, it's very important to actually be able to connect to that. Now, having commuted in London for years, dependent upon buses, I can tell you right now that when buses are actually traveling through traffic during a rush hour, they tend not to run on time. Well, and to me, even with the every 10 minutes, there's a greater likelihood that you're going to miss that connection that would actually take you to the junction to be able to get there on time.
Buses do better in London today since they put in the new
dedicated roadway.
Dedicated